views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Meetings of the Minds in partnership with BronxNet. These segments are geared toward making sure you know who our members are. Each episode is specifically geared to learning about partnerships our members are building and the resources they are providing to strengthen our business communities. More importantly, isn't it important for you to know who supports you so you can support them, and who is working with you so that you can work with them? You know, we are still a membership organization. So if you're not yet a member, it's super easy. Go to www.hispanicchamber.nyc www.hispanicchamber.nyc and follow us on LinkedIn. Engage with us. New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, all spelled out. That's right. Do the work. Do the work. It is my pleasure to introduce our newest member, Women-Owned Business. Isn't that exciting? You know, Amor para las Mujeres. CEO Think Tank. We have with us today founder and president Cheryl Beth Kuchler and her colleague Jill Huentelman. How are you, ladies? And we always ask, how is the familia, right? Because we're concerned about the family. We're Latinos, so we have to know to make sure the family is well and healthy.
Yes, the family is doing really well. My son is so excited to be getting back into cooking again. Restaurants are finally opening up down here in Philly, so couldn't be better.
And we're glad to be here. And over here, my family's great too. So all is good on that front.
Oh, fantastic. Now we can handle business, right? So tell me, what is CEO Think Tank? When did you guys start the business and why?
Yeah, so CEO Think Tank, we work with small and mid-market companies, entrepreneurs looking to grow, not just grow for growth's sake, but profitably, sustainably, robustly. It started over 2 decades ago, actually, when I had the fortune of working with a $48 million distribution company doing strategic planning after having worked in the Fortune 500 for the previous 15 years. And I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I did not intend. I actually started the business because of my family after I had my first son, will be 26 in May. And we just fell in love with small companies and helping them to grow, helping them to be successful, and helping them to make a difference in the world. And Jill is actually a former client who's now come on board.
Yes.
I'll pass the baton to her.
So I own a training company, an education company outside of Philadelphia. I started that company about 20 years ago. And about 10 years into that run, I met Cheryl Beth because at the time we were growing, we were adding people. I think I had about 15 people then. And I looked around and I said, well, I'm trying to hold everyone accountable, but who's holding me accountable as the CEO and the founder? And so I found Cheryl Beth and she became my business coach. And we instituted a lot of best practices for my company that I loved and I wanted to share with other people, other small businesses. And so that's what we're trying to do by reaching out through different organizations and sharing what we've learned about how best to grow profitably and well, and especially as women-owned businesses out there and all the things we have to juggle in our lives. So.
Sure. No, this is great. I like the phrase that Cheryl Beth used earlier about an accidental entrepreneur. And I think we find a lot of that. It's pretty much how we honor our calling. And sometimes we have circumstances in our lives that prompt us into our destiny, right? You've worked with a lot of CEOs, Fortune 500 companies, so you understand that culture well. And Jill being one of your clients and now esteemed partners and colleagues in this, why have you two decided to go to the Hispanic community, and why become a member of the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce?
Because we love you.
All right, we can end the show now.
You've been one of the wonderful bright lights that has come out of this horrible pandemic. So you and Cindy. So we deeply appreciate. Actually, Martin, we have to call out Martin Solorzano from Staff Inc., who is the one who introduced us. When we told him we wanted to reach more BIPOC businesses and women-owned businesses, although about half of the clients we work with are women-owned. Martin said, you have to meet Sulma. She's amazing, and the Hispanic Chamber is really doing amazing things here in New York. And we have several New York clients. And so we reached out to you, we had the conversation, and we're really committed. That's one of the things, having lived through that now, a third downturn, a third recession in the 25 years that I've had my business. We don't want those companies to not have access to growth tools. Like building a business is, we always say it's simple, like the concepts are very simple and straightforward, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of discipline. And there's been so many small companies that were adversely impacted by COVID and adversely impacted by the last year, in part because they just didn't have access, right? They didn't have access to capital. They didn't have access to a coach. They didn't have access to a community. And that's what we do. We're all about giving them access to the tools, giving them access to the community, and connecting them in order to give them that support and that foundation. Yeah.
Can you give us an example of the tools that you have given a particular company? Perhaps Jill can speak to her experience with you and how that helped her maximize her business.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the tools that I found particularly helpful was actually a one-page plan. And I know that sounds very simple, but it's very simple to have that maybe in your mind as a founder or a owner of your own company. But being able to communicate that to everybody else in the company is really important. And so being able to write down, what are our priorities, for this year? Where are we headed, and what are the people we might want to attract into our company? What are the core values that we really want to make sure we attract the right people in and live by those standards? There's so many things. Like, it's just really clarifying to go through some of these, again, simple concepts, but they're not easy. And to be able to walk through it so that for me as a owner of my company, I was able to communicate that better to everybody else in the organization and build that family-like business that really wanted to have a purpose and really wanted to be very clear on who our customers were and what we were here to do at the end of the day. So having even that one-page strategic plan was huge for me at that time. So
that's a big pivot, because I think that as women, we multitask and we carry so much information all at the same time that when we do sit down and write out the business plan, we think it needs to look like a book. And what you're saying, it doesn't. We can simplify it. It's easier to remember your pitch, and it's easier to share with others to get on board with what you're planning to
exactly
assembled. I think it's very new and very, very different, but I could see how it's extremely helpful. I know that we have a webinar coming up soon. Can
Yep.
you share a little bit more about that? Because we definitely want our members and our partners and all of our affiliates to be a part of it.
Mhm.
Yes, so we're very excited about this webinar and partnering obviously with the Hispanic Chamber to get it out there. But the webinar is actually going to be on May 12th from 10:30 a.m. to noon, 12 o'clock, so about an hour and a half time. Yes, right, New York time. And it's all about what we call getting back to basics. And so we thought this was a great time given what's happened in the last year. And as the world and New York City starts to reopen back up here a little bit, that I just heard that today. I think the goal in New York City is to reopen by July 1st, I think, for it, which is 100%, which is fabulous. But the back to business basics is really about sharing some of those tools that you might want to consider to implement in your small business. It's to understand really the 4 critical decisions that every business owner really has to consider. And it's part strategy, part execution on getting things done. It's people and cash, right? So having those, understanding what those 4 critical decisions are and how to look at those and how those apply to your company. We'll talk about a bunch of stuff. We'll talk about the 3 barriers to growth. What are those? Like if you're about to grow, what are those things that you might want to consider or have your eye on as you're growing? And then we also have a roadmap we want to share. Like what are the steps that you might want to take to make sure that you're growing sustainably and profitably for it. So please join us. We're very excited, and because we're here to share, we're here to serve, we're here to help other business owners. That's really what gets me excited nowadays, is really being able to share those tools so that people can get back to basics and serve their customers at the end of the day. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, thank you for that. You know, here at the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we're very selective, I want to say, with our members, right? And you 2 incredible women, Jill and Cheryl, you really represent allyship, right? And those are the type of conversations that we had even to have you on board as a member of the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. It's about those mutually beneficial relationships. And what I appreciate about both of you and CEO Think Tank is that you are valuing, right, our spending power, but how do we maximize it to support our respective communities, right? The same thing that you have done and continue to do with CEOs in corporate America. How do we take those tools and to revitalize our communities for us, by us? And we appreciate that resource. So we thank you so much for being a part of the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, for valuing our culture, for understanding what we're about, and more importantly, for sharing what you know to make us even better, right? To continue to support our own respective community and the community at large. If you are not yet a member of the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, again, it's easy, New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.nyc. I don't know why I always do this, but Cheryl, I always do this before, I swear. Cheryl, how to get in contact with you, because people know how to get in contact with us.
Just check out the website. It's ceothinktank.com. You can Google us, YouTube CEO Think Tank. Actually, if you want access to some of the growth tools, we've got a YouTube channel as well. And follow us on LinkedIn, and please subscribe to the channel. We're working to build up our subscribers and make the growth curriculum available to everyone. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us. We look forward to continued membership and, of course, strengthening our relationship as we move forward. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Next time, everyone.